just rest assured. Take it up off the floor, give it all to the poor. And this is how I'm living, I'll give it, he'll give me more. Not for the love of money, Dios me and more. I'm a millionaire, baby. Private jet, yacht, Mercedes. I'm a millionaire, baby.
The cross tells the story of his death. But the nail-pierced hand tells the story of his resurrection. Victory, overcoming, never giving up. This is more than clothing, but this is identity. The power of soul-purchased clothing.
I'm sitting today with Pryme Minister, a Christian with a message, also a man producing product for sale, and a musician, a man after my own heart. Very nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, Roger.
So you have a heartfelt feeling about the status of Christianity today.
Absolutely. Anytime there's trouble in the world, anytime there's crisis in the world, is a great opportunity to promote our faith. You know what I mean? Because we believe that through God all things are possible. With the love of Jesus Christ, we see the power of God to save, the power of God to change, the power of God to heal. That doesn't stop in the church, behind the church walls. We can execute that change outside the church walls, in the marketplace, in the business place, in the media world, in fashion. So our goal is to bring Christ wherever he's not. Fashion, business, music, media, technology.
And have you had a personal experience to bring you to this place in your life?
Absolutely. Growing up as a young kid in love with hip hop, I was intrigued with hip hop. I'm from the hip hop era. I grew up in the early 90s. And, it became our language. Just like for some people, rock and roll is their language, or jazz is the language that they identify with. Hip hop became my language. And when I got into church, faith and Bible study and going to church, and starting to move towards Christian music versus the secular mainstream music, they wasn't talking my language. It was very hard for me to share it with my peers because they didn't really understand praise and worship or gospel choirs and this type of thing. We grew up listening to drum beats and hard rhymes and rhythms and lyrics and stuff. So, the thought came to me that, maybe we can change the lyrics, use the same type of music and change the messaging. Maybe we can get them. So, Christian rap was always evangelistic. It was to reach the unreachable. It was to reach people who probably would never feel comfortable coming into a church house,
sure,
or anything like that. So that was the beginning. And then it went from music to health to technology. And it's like, wow, we could do this for God over here.
Sure, there's a lot of ways to get the message out.
There's a lot of ways to get the message out.
I think in today's environment, it's a fact that the churches are emptying out. There's young people today don't practice Christianity in the same way that their parents and grandparents did. Doesn't always mean they don't love God.
Right.
But there seems to be somewhat of a falling out from the people who go and sit in the pew,
right,
and listen to the minister.
Right.
So these type of outlets to get the message out are powerful.
Powerful.
And needed.
And needed.
Right. So tell me about your music.
My music is, wow. My music evolved over time, right? So when I first started making music, it was pretty much gangster rap. I was emulating everything that I was hearing, everything that I was seeing, some of the things I was experiencing, and the whole idea in hip hop growing up as a kid is to be extremely aggressive. You got to be aggressive. You got to be, because if it ain't hard, it ain't good. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense, but if it ain't rough and dangerous and crazy,
well, that was the audience.
That's the audience. Yeah. We want the music to be aggressive. Yeah. When I got into my faith and I began to want to express the things that I was learning and my new beliefs and the way I was viewing the world, And just the amazing God. You know, God is amazing. I became somewhat of a fan of God. You know, I'm like, wow, God, you made this, you made the sun, you made the earth, you made the universe, you made our bodies so complex, it could do this, it could do that. I'm like, wow, God is amazing. It's amazing he's done all these things. Nobody never thinks about him. So I always thought it was amazing, so I would make all these songs to kind of express it to somebody who's maybe an unbeliever.
Sure.
And so that it became a process of, I hate to say this word, but a process of compromise. You know, I had to go all the way back almost to an infantile state so that I could relate to people, because I felt like if I talked to them from the pulpit, they wouldn't relate to me. So I have to almost kind of come down to the muddy water and talk to them as a peer and almost become like them to a certain degree. And the consequence of that is it becomes too aggressive. So then the religious people say it's too religious, it's too hard for religious people. And then on the other side, maybe it's too much faith for the unbeliever. So it was threading the needle. It was kind of finding the balance.
And sometimes there's a turning point with people. There's a time in their life when they're ready. And not everybody's ready all the time.
Right.
And if you have a message out there that they can hear and they can listen, it might hit them at the right time.
Right.
Other people, it might just go right over their head, but doesn't mean they won't come back.
Right.
Right? I mean, have you found that?
But it's funny you say that. This is a shameless plug, pardon me. But we are releasing an album. It's called The Puzzle, which comprises 20 some odd years of albums that I released. The albums that I released were put out in a time and in a culture where the message of Jesus Christ was not really welcomed in the music business.
Sure.
So I would put out, I'm blessed, what would Jesus do? Jesus Christ is extraordinary. And of course nobody's listening, right? Because again, the culture is demanding something very much different from Jesus Christ, something much negative. And so we had the idea to take those albums that we released over the last 20 some odd years and put them into one complete body of work. And when you listen to the album today, it's really interesting because it shows how the connectivity of all those songs throughout all those various different times, you know, and each one is kind of marked by different things that's going on in politics and things that inspired the record. So yeah, that's the new album that we're releasing. Yeah.
So listeners today, if they wanted to tune in, where do they go?
Go to soulpurchase.com. It's available there. Soul Purchased.
Soulpurchased.
That's right.
.com.
That's right.
And you've got your music there.
Yes.
All right. And what do we got going on here?
So this is one of our sneakers from our line, the Soul Purchase clothing line, that has our logo. This is a very powerful logo.
It is.
It's the image of the nail-pierced hand of Jesus Christ.
Sure.
So everybody knows that the Christian cross is the symbol of Christianity around the world, because this good man, Jesus Christ, who was crucified, he experienced every horrible thing a man can experience, right? He was betrayed. He was wrongly convicted, prosecuted. You know, he was beaten. He was spat upon. I mean, it was legendary, right? His grief. At one point, he felt even abandoned by God. He said, God, why have you forsaken me? You know, it was heartbreaking. If you have a heart, your heart will be broke to watch it. The beating of Jesus Christ, his crucifixion. Years later, the cross has become a universal symbol. It belongs to the public domain. Everybody uses it when they think about God and his death and his sacrifice. The interesting thing about Jesus Christ is after he died, you know, the story tells us he went down into the place of the dead, Sheol, hell, or whatever. It has different names. But where those who have passed on, that's where they were. He went down there, said that he preached to those people. And in 3 days he resurrected. He wasn't found in his tomb. And the record tells us that. It was so powerful that when he came back, there were dead people walking around. A lot of people don't talk about that aspect. The veil in the temple was rent, was split in half. The rocks cracked in half. People who were alive years ago that had died and passed on were up walking around. This is some of the some of the records of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And when he went back to his followers after he resurrected, they thought they were looking at an apparition. They said, how could you be dead? We watched this brutal death, so you're gone for good. You know, nobody's expecting you to come back. So he just walks into a group of them, a great multitude, you know, and they asked him, you know, Lord, is it really you? You know what I mean? Because they're thinking that they're looking at a ghost. He said, no, it's really me. Look at my wound. Look and believe. And so it became a symbol that nobody really uses. You probably really ever heard a preacher preach about it.
It's true. You don't see the mark in the palm of Jesus' hand as an image.
No.
But it's a good one. It's a powerful one.
It's a powerful one.
Yes, it is.
And if you know anything about, you know, the teachings, the Old Testament to the New Testament, how they kind of mirror each other, you know. So in the Old Testament, you had the story of Moses. And, you know, Moses was asking Pharaoh, let the people go. They were so cruel to the people, God says he's going to release his plagues, right? And so he says, listen, I'm going to take the blood of an innocent lamb, has to be innocent, just like Jesus, because innocent blood is protection in the spiritual world from evil spirits. You see, it's like a repellent. It's like, this is totally innocent. I can't do nothing to this. So the Lord tells him, put the blood over the posts of the children of Israel. So when the angel comes to bring all this destruction, he's going to see that blood, and he's going to know, don't touch this house. So it represents that, represents protection. It represents the price that was paid for you. So when you start thinking about, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm feeling guilty. I've committed a sin. I'm not good enough. Da, da, da. You look at that and say, that was the price that was paid for me. So it deals with guilt. It deals with all those little things. So it is something special, and I want people to really learn more about it. And
sure,
you know,
sure.
Yeah.
And somebody wants to wear one of these shoes.
Yeah.
They can get them on the
soulpurchase.com.
Soulpurchase.com.
Yep.
All right. That's good news.
Yes, sir.
He suffered the most brutal, painful, and unjust death in the history of all mankind. Jesus Christ. The cross has become the symbol of his death and sacrifice. After 3 days, he rose from the grave with a mighty earthquake. After he resurrected, he was seen by a great multitude. Some who were in disbelief asked him, Jesus, is it really you? And he replied, look at my wounds. Soul purchased, the nail-pierced hand of Jesus Christ, the symbol of his resurrection, the symbol of his victory, the symbol of his triumph.